Hi, my name is Angelo Lopez. I'm a Filipino American editorial cartoonist based in the San Francisco Bay Area, and today I have the honor to be speaking to Zahra Billoo. Did I pronounce your name right?
You did, Angelo. It's good
Okay.
to meet you, and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, okay. Let me give a brief information about you. You're the executive director of the Council on American-Islamic Relations, San Francisco Bay Area chapter. And Zara is also a great advocate for the Muslim American community. You do legal representation on cases of discrimination against the Muslim American community. And I guess you also do a lot of advocacy by appearing in a lot of news sites and stuff. So today, for anybody watching the video, we'll be talking about the Muslim American community as well as the Trump administration's effects on that community. So thank you. And let me see if I can say it again. Assalamu alaikum,
Wa
right?
alaikum assalam. Yes, greetings and peace
Okay.
on you as well.
Yeah. So we actually did an interview 10 or 15 years ago on my
Oh,
blog
wonderful.
and stuff. So thank you for doing that. But I also want to apologize in the sense that anytime I contact you, usually when something bad is going on in the Muslim community. So I want to make sure you don't in the future, if I ever contact you, you don't dread seeing my name.
It's not you, I dread, Angelo. It's not you.
Okay, okay. I guess I'll start with my first question.
Sure.
Tell me about the Council on American Islamic Relations, and also on a personal level, how did you become involved in social justice activism?
Absolutely. Oh, I can't imagine a life that wasn't social justice activism in this
Oh,
moment. But
yeah.
so CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, was started in the early 90s by a group of American Muslims who were asking the question, how do we build collective power in our community? They were responding to and experiencing discrimination. They were seeing political officials leveraging hate to divide communities. And of course, they were also seeing harmful narratives being spread in mainstream media. And so they looked at organizations such as the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People,
Yeah.
MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, and others. And they said, let's model an organization that could serve our communities in this way. And so today, CARE has upwards of 30 offices across the country, including
Oh,
4 in California. And we provide free legal services to anyone facing discrimination because they are Muslim or mistaken for Muslim, as well
oh,
as free immigration legal services to anyone who can't afford immigration legal assistance. We
oh,
work with the media on a regular basis to ensure that our stories are told. We work with elected officials and voters to connect the dots on civic engagement. And then we do a lot of community outreach and education. So we are routinely visiting mosques, college and school campuses, and community centers because none of this matters, Angelo, if it's just me and my team who know our rights. Everybody needs to know how to get involved and what to do.
yeah.
I was, so the question of how I ended up here,
Yeah.
I
Were you
was
just,
17.
minding your own business
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
wanted
just like, oh,
to?
good job. I mean, kind of, and no, but like, and yes, I was 17 when 9/11 happened. And
Oh,
that was, one of my early experiences with feeling unsettled in
yeah.
my identity as an American. I was born here.
Yeah.
English is not my first language, but it is now my primary language. And, we grew up vacationing in middle America. Like we would drive cross country to Florida
Yeah.
from Los Angeles. It's a big feat. I've seen Oklahoma and Minneapolis and all the things in
Oh,
between.
is it
Um,
just flat fields?
it depends.
I don't know. I've never been through the middle
Um,
America.
it's very flat. Like once you get past
Okay.
Sierra Nevada, and I shouldn't have said Minneapolis, which I've been to as well, but we drove cross country to Miami, Florida one year.
Oh,
And so Texas, Oklahoma, Mississippi, Arkansas, I don't remember. I lose the order of things. But we also drove cross country to Canada numerous times.
oh,
And 9/11 happens and it's like, wait, what? Like, what do you mean I'm not American enough? And I've got a mouth on me. So like I'm a talker, I'm argumentative, and it naturally was inclined towards advocacy for targeted people
yeah.
post 9/11. I went to law school. And actually, you weren't wrong. I actually just needed a job when I graduated in
Oh,
2009. I was hiring. I had a relationship here because these were
I was
people
just
I had
kidding about that.
interned with. No, but it's true. It's true. I had interned here. I had stayed in touch, and it was a really bad economy, and they were willing to hire me. And I was like, yes, please, my loans will come due soon.
Oh,
But that was in fall 2009. So it'll be 16 years in fall 2025. And my initial years doing this work, Barack Obama was president, and we were coming off 8 years of George W. Bush, then 4 years of Donald Trump, then 4 years of Biden. We've got a Muslim ban and COVID and a number of things in between. And so every day is different, but I start my days in this really difficult time, just knowing I get to do something that makes a difference, or that hopefully makes a difference.
yeah. I'm wondering, did when me as a Filipino American, when I was young, I kind of had a struggle between, feeling like a Filipino and feeling like an American. It took me a while to realize I can love my Filipino heritage and love being an American, because sometimes you're made to feel like you're not an American. Is part of your inspiration just I am an American and I'm going to prove it, damn it, type thing, right?
Yes, and like, well, there's a third layer here, right? Because so like my ethnic identity, right, is I'm Pakistani, and
Okay.
so I'm Pakistani of South Asian origin, and my parents migrated to the United States, and they had to make decisions about which parts of their culture to hold on to, and with limited ability, do they teach us the culture? Or do they teach us Islam and raise us as Muslims, and how to hold even just those two? And then you
Yeah.
add the American component to it. But yeah, there's absolutely a factor around I'm American, I belong here, my values are aligned, right? So I actually find Islamic values to be very much aligned with American like values around freedom and liberty and privacy and safety, like those things. There's a like a cultural component, and then Angela, there's honestly like a try to send me to Guantanamo. Let's see what happens, right?
Oh.
You can't send me anywhere. This is the only passport I've ever had. There is no
Yeah.
country that would be willing to take me. And so I don't want to go to Guantanamo, of course, but my parents would worry about that early in my work at CAIR. Like I'd get on TV and I'd say something like really bold around our rights or our freedoms. And my parents would worry, like, be careful or they're going to send you to Guantanamo. And I believed that this government would try. It is in fact trying now.
Right.
Um, but I would probably be among the last to go as a US citizen. And so I feel as though I hold a responsibility on behalf of those who are much more easily targeted.
Yeah, I think the only reason I'm asking that is because you mentioned that you were a little bit argumentative and
Oh,
stuff, and I
so
think, and I was wondering if it's just your nature.
it is. I think so. It's the like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Am I argumentative because I'm a lawyer, or am I a lawyer because I'm argumentative? Ultimately, I was argumentative first. Um,
Oh, okay.
my mom has a funny story about like the way I would debate which food we could eat and like not following the rules and like turned on the TV and that kind of thing. And that's why they sent me to law school because I was argumentative.
Yeah, I have a similar relationship with my parents and stuff. Growing up, it was lovingly exasperation. It's loving exasperation. That was sort of like my relationship with my parents. I love my parents, and my parents love me, but because of the cultural differences, there was always this sense of exasperation. So I don't know if that's same with
That's,
you.
that's such a, I've never heard it described that way, like loving exasperation, but I think that's accurate. And I wonder how many other people that would resonate with who are, I forget the phrasing, right? But where the parents are immigrants and the kids were either born here or also immigrants, but are more entrenched in American culture. And some of it is also just parenting, right? Like
Yeah,
I now in my 40s, there are things that my parents did in their 40s that make sense to me.
no,
Or there are peculiarities that I find in myself that I realize they had also. And so I wonder if it's just the cycle of life, in addition to adding like immigration culture. And our parents went through a lot. Like they grew up
yeah.
with scarcity. They picked, I can't move cities without freaking out. And they moved across the world.
Yeah, yeah. I sometimes think you don't appreciate until you're an adult. I didn't appreciate my parents' sacrifice until I became an adult and
That's
stuff, because I didn't realize my parents went through World War II, the Japanese invasion,
yeah.
Marcos, and the martial law, and
Yeah.
I've never been through a war and stuff,
Right, right.
so
Like it never hits home for us. Like the United States has been at war in our lifetimes, and we have
yeah,
watched it from the comfort of our homes in California. But
yeah,
we've never wondered about like sirens as drones are coming down,
yeah,
right? We never, probably in most cases, like most Californians have not experienced power outages or water shortages or food
yeah,
shortages. Um, I
yeah.
tell a lot of parents these days when they're struggling with their teenagers and even 20 somethings, like, don't worry, if you did the best you could, by the time they're in their 30s, they'll appreciate you. So
If
sad.
you, yeah, if you can survive the first
Yeah.
30
If
years, they'll start to
exasperation
appreciate
doesn't get to you
it.
before then.
You have a better relationship with your parents now because of your understanding now.
Yes. And I try,
Okay.
it's, I've been fortunate to have a good relationship with my parents throughout because they were so patient with me, and
Okay.
so kind and supportive. But I think I am more reflective of how much better I could and should be with them
Yeah.
than I was at my younger age. And I'm more intentional about making effort than I was at my younger age. And honestly, life catches up to you. Like I'm at a place in life now where my friends are burying their parents, right? There's this like period in life where it's like everyone in your social circle is getting married. Then everyone in your social circle is having kids or getting a promotion. And then everyone in your social circle is starting, like, one parent dies and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
fortunately not too frequent yet, but it's often enough to
Yeah.
remind us that tomorrow is never promised.
Yeah. I'm in my 50s. All of my friends in the 50s, whenever we talk, all we talk about is caregiving. So right now I'm caregiving for my dad and my mother-in-law right now. So if I have to take a break, it's because of my mother-in-law because
Of
I'm with her
course.
right now. But I think it's just a part of life, but it's just it's just a different part of life. But I think it's just something we all go through. It's just I'm taking a lot more naps now that I'm in my
Yes,
50s.
yes, yes, yes. And it is, it should be stated that it is the honor of a lifetime to be able to repay a fraction of what our parents did for us.
Yeah,
Um, it really like the as they grow older, and
yeah,
mine are not dependent on any of us yet, but I, I'm reminded that like we were completely dependent on them for everything.
yeah,
And they did that with grace and with a smile. And
yeah,
I hope they are never, my mom would always pray, like, God, please never make me dependent on anyone.
yeah,
Um, and so
yeah,
I hope they're never dependent on us, but if they are, I hope that we can be supportive in the way they need.
yeah, yeah. I'm 15 years older than you and stuff. So, but it's my relationship with my dad. There's still some exasperation, but there's also a lot of love and
Yeah.
stuff. When we get annoyed and mad at each other, we instantly try to forgive each other and stuff. So, yeah.
Tomorrow is never promised.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm trying to appreciate my time with both. I love my mother-in-law too and stuff. So I'm trying to appreciate my time with both of them as much as I can. So okay, here. Um, and many people have stereotypes of Muslims.
Mhm.
Can you tell me about the diversity of the Muslim American community?
Sure. Gosh, there are so many stereotypes. My favorite is when I start talking and people are surprised that I have a voice or that I speak English or that I'm allowed to speak.
Yeah.
Um, so the Muslim community in the United States is difficult to count because the government doesn't track people based on religion, or they say they don't.
Yeah.
But estimates are between 7 and 9 million Muslims in the United States. They
Oh,
have been here this country, since people arrived in this country, right? And so there are beliefs that a number of the Africans who were kidnapped and brought here and enslaved were Muslim. Um,
oh,
so African Muslims have been in the United States for a very long time. And then other Muslims have come in various waves of immigration,
yeah.
including South Asians, Arab Americans, East Asians, and so on.
Yeah.
And this is such rough math, but when we talk about it generally, we estimate about one third of American Muslims are African and African American, one third are South Asian, and then one third are Arab American, and then the balance of the 10%, so 30-30, right, and then 10 are other, right? So they're going to be European Muslims, South American Muslims, and so on. And honestly, Angelo, you'll find them in every corner of this country. They do
Yeah,
everything from government jobs and elected office to media professionals, lawyers, teachers, and service workers, right? So
yeah,
a lot of union members, for example, in blue collar service jobs are Muslim. Graduate students in union jobs are Muslim,
yeah.
and
You know,
income varies, right? So you
yeah.
get like really, 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 as with any community, you've got the richest of the rich and you've got the poor of the poor. And we saw in the 2024 election that you've got Republican Muslims and Democrat Muslims, and then other Muslims who are like, I hate all of the parties, count me out of the whole system.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a, you know, I went to a few LGBTQIA political rallies, and there's gay and lesbian Muslims too and stuff. I did, you know, it didn't occur to me, but it clicked in my mind when I saw that and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
As with any, right, as with any community, like there are people of all sexual orientation and gender identity across communities. You'll find varying interpretations of what and how the religion approaches sexual orientation, and people are people, so you'll find
yeah,
them everywhere.
yeah. Are you happy as like I know that some Muslim comedians are becoming more popular. Is that like a pot? I mean, is that a good way of breaking stereotypes and
I
stuff?
mean, as with any profession, you're going to find them in any sector, right?
Yeah,
So I definitely think comedy is necessary
yeah,
these days. Yeah, sometimes there's nothing left to do but laugh.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It kind of breaks the you know, I think there's a stereotype of this stern kind of Muslim who never laughs and stuff. And
Yeah.
I always feel like having listening. There's a guy named Rami. I forget his last
Oh
name.
yeah, with the show, Rami Youssef.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I like his show because it gave a very different view of Muslims. And I forgot. There's another show where this. Um, I forgot if I'm not sure if he's Muslim, but he has parents who are Muslim, and his girlfriend goes into a coma, and I forget the name of the movie, but it's a kind of a romantic comedy where the girl is in a coma for half the movie. So but it's not a romance between him and the girl. It's more of a romance between him and the girl's parents, where they bond and stuff. He plays the comedian. I forgot his name, but if I can think of the name, oh, the Big Sick.
I've heard of that. Okay, but I'm not familiar with the movie. I've heard the name, but I'm not familiar with the movie. And so that's so interesting. But I mean, that's the thing, right? Is Muslims are so diverse when it comes to racial and ethnic background, religious practice, political leanings. And yes, like there are people who are LGBT and Muslim, and there are people who are Republican and Muslim, and there are people who are comedians and who are
Yeah,
Muslim, right?
some Muslims are funny. Yeah.
Yeah, Muslims are funny. But what you remind me of, what you were saying about the stern stereotype actually reminds me of something else, is that stereotype is most prevalent about Muslim men and Arab men, right? They are stern, they are angry, they are fierce,
Yeah,
and they are the terrorist
yeah,
um, in how they are stereotyped. And um, in watching the genocide in Gaza
yeah,
unfold, that stereotype has come crashing down because we've seen so many videos of so many Arab, Muslim, and Christian men who are
yeah,
nurturing and who are caring for their babies and who are grieving their loved ones. And so we've initially, as we would talk about the impact of the genocide, we would talk about the women and the children.
yeah,
This many women, this many children, to which a number of men and others said, but what about the men? The men are human also. And so there's been this,
yeah,
it's I wouldn't even call it a silver lining because a genocide is a genocide, but some of the emergence around challenging the stereotypes about
yeah,
Muslim men in particular, Muslim and Arab men in particular, has been front and center
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
way
I guess
that's,
Palestinian men are really facing the after effects of that stereotype
yeah.
because
And
they
they're
this is so they're
challenging it head on, right?
yeah,
Inadvertently. The way you see them so warm and caring for the
yeah,
sick and the dying, I think really brings to the forefront that that stereotype is not based in fact, but rather in a narrative that enables violence against our communities.
yeah, yeah. I think it's something right now the American right is really taking advantage of and stuff. So okay, well, yeah, I think I have a question later that'll kind of touch on that too. So I'm curious. Um, there's a bill, Assembly Bill 715 and stuff. Um, this is a two-part question.
Sure.
What exactly is Bill Assembly Bill 715? But also a related question: why is ethnic studies important?
Yeah. So let's start with the second question.
Okay.
Ethnic studies is important in California, but also in education more broadly, because we live in a increasingly diverse society. Ethnic studies provides the framework and the roadmap to facilitate student learning about our different backgrounds, where we came from, how we got here, how are our communities stronger together, and what our histories are. We
Mm,
can't move forward without first learning and acknowledging our pasts.
yeah.
Several years ago, the California legislature passed a law that made ethnic studies a graduation requirement in California.
Yeah.
And that legislation and that mandate has not yet been fully funded. And so, one consequence of that has been this ongoing debate about what is and is not permissible in ethnic studies. And we've seen it playing out at school board levels
Yeah.
across the state. So literally school board by school board, people are debating, what's allowable in ethnic studies. And so a flashpoint in that debate is if and how the experience of Palestinians is taught in ethnic studies. And there are a number of anti-Palestinian groups that would much rather that the lived experience of Palestinians be erased from ethnic studies.
Yeah.
They have repeatedly called for the erasure of Palestine and Palestinian experiences in ethnic studies. And so AB Assembly Bill 715 is a version 2, if one could describe it that way, of Assembly Bill 1468, which was introduced in the California legislature this year and attempted to further politicize ethnic studies by stripping ethnic studies professionals of the ability to decide what goes into teaching ethnic studies. And it was being put forward by a number of anti-Palestinian groups and legislators who said that they were trying to be neutral, but whose track record spoke louder. And
Oh,
so if you have a track record of being anti-Palestinian and now you want to be neutral, we're not going to believe you.
yeah.
That bill was ultimately withdrawn by its authors, and they instead offered support for Assembly Bill 715, which was an existing bill about something completely unrelated, but through a legislative loophole process. The
Oh,
legislators said, okay, we're going to amend it. We're going to do it a little bit like they did it last minute without public input. And then they
mhm.
were repeatedly dismissive of constituents who came forward to
So they're
advocate.
trying to sneak it in.
They're trying to sneak it in, and they've been
Mhm.
able to do that thus far. And what they put forward in Assembly Bill 715 is an attempt to uh, uh, an attempt to ease censorship of public educators. So make it easier to complain about your teacher when your teacher says something, right? And so this is again the what's hard here is when you look at the bill just on the language, initially it may not sound so bad, but then when you look at the intent of the legislators putting it forward and their repeat track record with targeting teaching about Palestine in classrooms, it makes it very worrisome that they're building their power in this way. And so that bill has passed in the Assembly, and it will go through the committee process in the Senate. And CAIR, as well as our partners at the Arab Resource and Organizing Center, Jewish Voice for Peace, and a number of others have put forward concerns. We've mobilized thousands of letters from constituents, and we're really calling on legislators to say, look, we have a robust complaint process already. There are
Yeah.
already very strict guardrails in place to ensure education is in line and to standard.
Yeah.
This is not going to make our kids any safer.
Okay. I'm wondering, one of the reasons I'm wondering is opposition to a standalone bill would be easier to build. But if a bill is, if this is part of an amendment to another bill, you know, you understand what I'm trying to get
Yes.
at and stuff?
So
Does
this
that
is
mean if there are parts in 715 that are generally popular, sneaking in an unpopular amendment to a popular bill makes it harder to build opposition for it? Is that
You're
am
right.
I right or am I
No, no,
wrong?
you're right, but that's not what's happening here quite.
Okay.
The same. What they did is that they fully gutted 715 as it existed prior and replaced
Okay.
it with new language. And so what made it difficult to mobilize opposition
Yeah.
was how late in the legislative process they did that, and
Okay.
how it limited the ability to offer public opposition in terms of the way committee structures and deadlines work.
Yeah.
Um, it is also facially neutral. So if you were looking at it, you wouldn't know that its primary champions are groups that have had years of anti-Palestinian advocacy. And so that is where we are. And what we are, our position right now is that we fully oppose Assembly Bill 715.
Okay.
And I should make one other note is, Angela, this is happening in a moment when right-leaning legislators
Yeah.
across the country are trying to further censor education and are trying to further penalize teachers who don't teach to the rhetoric that the government demands. And so we can't see AB 715 in isolation, and we
Yeah.
cannot assume that because the legislators putting it forward in California are Democrats, that this isn't still a move in the wrong direction in
Yeah.
education more broadly.
Yeah. A lot
This is
of your
not
thing
happening
sounds
in
like you need to educate people about it and stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I used to work in the public library for 28 years.
Oh,
I,
wow.
I know that public libraries are facing not the same, but similar, like book bans,
Right,
attacks on drag story
right,
hours and stuff. So
right.
I'm
And
wondering if there's a similar thing with taking away Muslim literature and is there some?
Palestine literature, yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely, right? There's absolutely a targeting of pro-Palestine authors and pro-Palestine academics. But also, Angela, just as an aside, one of the first groups that I would say inspired my quote unquote radicalization as an activist were
oh,
librarians.
oh, wow.
Um, Post 9/11, librarians were the best to organize and say, we will oppose the Patriot Act. Because remember,
Wow.
as the government unrolled more and more surveillance legislation, one of the places they were targeting was libraries. Like they
Yeah.
wanted search records of patrons, and
Mhm.
librarians were out there opposing the Patriot Act. And I thought, no, I sincerely, like I use the word radicalized like in this sort of casual way, but like among like my early influences
Yeah.
as an activist were librarians.
Okay. Well, I'll tell my former coworkers
Yeah,
that.
I deeply
Oh,
appreciate it.
Oh, okay. Well, we have 9 minutes for this first part and stuff. Let me ask this next question, and if you don't have time to fully finish your answer, we can go to the next video and stuff.
Okay,
How are you enjoying yourself so far?
I'm good. I thought we were 40 minutes total, not 40 and 40, but did I misunderstand?
Yeah, I think it's 40 and 40, but do you have time for that or no?
I could probably go until 7 at the latest.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, let me ask this last question then and stuff. So, okay. So, the Trump administration has has targeted both legal and illegal immigrants and stuff. How has this affected the Muslim American community?
So we try really hard to call them documented and undocumented
Oh,
because
okay, okay.
no human is
Okay.
illegal, and that's okay. I hope you don't. I hope you'll leave in. I hope you'll leave in that notation as well in the recording, just because it's like even among friends, we have to remind each other sometimes, right? Because
Yeah.
the right, not the right and like MAGA groups repeat their language so much that we adopt it and we don't even realize. In
Okay.
terms of the way in which the Trump administration's targeting of immigrants has impacted the Muslim community, there are so many ways, right?
Yeah.
The most recent is the newest and expanded Muslim and African travel ban. So there are more countries on the list, and we've been waiting for months to see what the Trump administration would do. And just a couple of weeks ago, they issued the new ban, and so there's a direct targeting of people from a number of Muslim majority countries being
Oh,
barred from coming into the United States. There are also Muslims who are documented and undocumented, just like in any other community. And so when we see ICE raids happening at workplaces or on the streets or in various community centers, we have to be mindful of and anticipate the possibility that some of the people targeted will be Muslim. And across immigrant communities, whether or not somebody is directly targeted, they're all indirectly impacted. We're all indirectly impacted, right? I have US citizen family members and friends who are asking, do I need to carry my passport with me, right? Is it
yeah.
safe to go out? I've had to think twice. Do I go to this protest? And I've been going to protests for over 20 years,
Yeah.
but can I risk a mistaken ICE detention? And so
Yeah.
this moment is one that is frightening because it would appear that federal law enforcement has taken the gloves off. They put their masks on so they
Yeah.
can't get into any personal trouble for what they're doing, but they've taken the gloves off.
Yeah.
And we all need to be cautious. We also all need to be more engaged in pushing back. My concern is that this Trump administration is far more emboldened than
Yeah.
the last Trump administration. And whatever, Angelo, they get away with doing right now, they
Yeah.
will keep doing. Like it's not as though in 4 years we get a new president who's a Democrat and everything gets better. No, things will stay however we allowed them to be in the Trump administration.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious. And if we still have 6 minutes, but in case you are not able to talk for the next meeting, UC Berkeley, many faculty members were, I guess, subpoenaed for their private information because they signed a petition for Palestinian, for the Gaza war, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if part of what you're saying is just a sense of loss of free, the freedom of speech is a lot more precarious now.
Yes, and it was under Joe Biden's administration too. So Democrats and Republicans have both allowed anti-Palestinian, pro-genocide groups like the Anti-Defamation League and the Jewish Community Relations Council to
Yeah.
weaponize allegations of anti-Semitism as a means for silencing pro-Palestine advocates. And that's not just like it's not just to say that pro-Palestine advocates are being smeared. It's to say that under both the Biden and Trump administration, we've seen government authority used to enforce that smear. During the Biden administration, you saw local and federal law enforcement cracking down on pro-Palestine protesters, right? We saw so much violence on campuses,
Yeah.
including in solid blue Democrat California, where police were beating up students who were peacefully protesting for Palestine. Under
Oh,
the Trump administration, we've seen that he has brought in a number of appointees who ascribe to permitting the genocide in Gaza and to censoring all critique of that. And so we've seen then the targeting of educators at UC Berkeley, but also campuses across the country. Like we have grade school teachers who contact us and say that they've been alleged to be anti-Semitic because they wore a Palestine t-shirt and now they're scared about whether or not they get to keep their job. And that's not just in education. We see it
yeah.
in the medical sector, we see it in technology. And so all of us who have been advocating for an end to the genocide in Gaza have to manage the risk that
Yeah.
we will be smeared as anti-Semitic. And honestly, we've been so reliant on our pro-Palestine Jewish partners
Yeah.
to dispel those allegations and say, no, like Zionism is not an inherent part of Judaism,
Mhm.
and speaking out for Palestine is not inherently anti-Semitic.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm grateful you came back. So,
Of course. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
okay. So let me just ask my last question quickly. So, I'll combine my last two questions. I think my first one, since October 7th, since we're talking about, the October 7th, um, there's been a rise in this country in both Islamophobia and anti-Semitism. How have Muslim and Jewish groups worked together to fight both types of prejudices? And I think my last question, you can add both of them together. It's a scary time, right? What
Mhm.
gives you hope?
Yeah. Um, Muslim groups have worked really closely with Jewish partners in pro-Palestine efforts to, one, ensure that we are aligned in our advocacy for humanity and an end to the genocide in Gaza. Some of our closest partners have been Jewish Voice for Peace, and if not now. And I've personally been inspired by how many pro-Palestine Jewish activists have put their bodies on the line to advocate for Palestine. When we look at what is happening right now, I would not suggest that it's a Muslim or Jewish issue. In fact, it is about Palestine, and as many people as possible can rally for Palestine. The thing that comes to mind for me, unfortunately, is that Israel is the biggest recipient of US military aid dollars in the world. When we see bombs dropping on Gaza or bulldozers being used in the West Bank to steal land and demolish homes, that's US funded violence. And whenever the United States funds and facilitates violence abroad, that doesn't stop at our borders. We saw that, for example, with World War II, and when the United States was dropping nuclear bombs on Japan, it was also sending Japanese Americans into concentration camps here and permitting rampant anti-Asian violence here. When Donald Trump and his administration accused Asian Americans of having been purveyors of COVID-19, we saw a rise in anti-Asian violence here. And so, in that same way, as the United States allows Israel to indiscriminately kill Palestinians, we should expect that anti-Palestinian violence as well as anti-Arab and anti-Muslim violence will increase here, and it has. But our Jewish partners have been key to combating that
Mhm.
and to really standing together and saying that this isn't a Muslim or Jewish issue, but instead those of us that are opposed to genocide versus the loud but small group of people who support genocide.
Mhm.
So, what gives me hope? I am a person of faith. I believe that God Almighty is the most just and that justice will prevail. Whether it's in the short term or long term is yet to be determined, but what's critical is that it is coming. And I have to believe that. I remind my community members of that all the time, is that justice is promised to us.
Mhm.
There's something about knowing it as certain and fact that allows me to say, okay, I'm going to do the best that I can. And
Yeah.
I'm also going to trust the outcome.
You don't feel a responsibility of doing it all. Is that in a
I'm
way because if God, for like I used to think that if I, that if I don't do everything that I can and stuff, I feel like I didn't do enough, right? But isn't it like
yeah,
part of coalition is that there are different people doing their
different things. Yeah.
different specific
And
jobs.
doing, I struggle with this, Angelo. Like, I want to do everything I can, and I often feel like it is not enough.
Yeah.
And I have to trust God and I have to trust the outcome. And so I try to hold both things to be true, is
Oh,
I will
okay.
do the best that I can, right? And the outcome is not dependent on me. In fact, it is defiant of God for me to think that I control the outcome or for me to think that I am singular in determining the outcome. I am one contributor. And so I want to be able to tell my Lord, I tried. I did everything I had with everything you gave me.
yeah,
And, right, I trusted you. And that's what allows me, to your point, to let go and say, okay, I did the most I could, and I can't do any more. And sometimes I'm going to do very little and be successful, and sometimes I'm going to do a lot and not be successful. On the issue of Palestine, for example, Israel has been occupying stolen land for well over 70 years, right? So I may or may not see justice in my lifetime. There, in terms of strife around racial discrimination and racial violence in our country. That's hundreds of years old, right? And Black folks in our communities have yet to get full justice or reparations for what they experienced. And so I would be delusional to think that I would play a singular part in it. Instead,
yeah.
I'm a contributor, and we're all contributors.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I wasn't sure if my question made any sense and stuff. Like with me, I'm not a very good public speaker. I stutter sometimes, or I'm not a good political organizer. I don't have those skills, but I can do cartoons. So,
You're
or like,
absolutely right.
yeah,
No, your question made complete sense in so much as we also all have different roles. So the
yeah.
most I can do, Angelo, even if I gave it my best and my all, I couldn't draw a stick figure. Put it. And so what I mean by do the most I can is do the most I can within my skill set and capacity, right? And you
Yeah.
may, I'm, I doubt that you're not a great public speaker because I've interacted with you a few times or interacting great now. But let's say you're like, I really tried and I can't. That's fine. You're going to draw more cartoons, right? Somebody might be very socially awkward, but a great writer.
Yeah.
Somebody may not be a good public speaker, but a good fundraiser. And so and I mean, the way in which technology, right, is used to do organizing right now is also a factor. So you wouldn't
Yeah.
think of it, but a software engineer could play a critical role in the
Yeah.
next phase of the movement, despite not knowing how to make a rally sign.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Have you seen the TV show Andor?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. It's part of the Star Wars, um, but it's part of the Star Wars universe. But you're not a nerd, are you? You're not, I guess I am and stuff. But
I think there's a part of me that's so entertained by the fact I've never seen Star Wars or Star Trek.
oh,
I've never seen Lord of the Rings or
okay.
Harry Potter, but I understand that they are very critical to cultural influence, and so I
Yeah.
respect the nerds.
Yeah, well, part of the Star Wars thing George Lucas did was he originally wanted Star Wars to be a very anti-authoritarian.
Mhm.
It's basically the premise of it is a fight against totalitarianism, but
Right,
the science fiction part, the lightsabers got in the way. So Andor took away all of that stuff, and it just focused on totalitarianism and
Mm,
how people begin to join a rebellion and stuff.
nice.
And each person they don't have the full they don't have the full you know the whole rebellion doesn't rely just on one person, but
Exactly.
each person plays a role, an important role, even if an unseen role
Right,
in,
right.
in moving the revolution. So one person's role is very different than another, but without those two people and stuff, I
Yeah.
don't know that. So
Oh, that makes
if
sense.
you ever decide to become a nerd, watch
Okay, I'll
Andor.
look it up. Okay, I will look it up.
Okay, it's
Sounds
a
better than
Disney.
Instagram doom scrolling. So,
Go to Disney Plus.
okay,
Go to
sounds like a
Disney
plan.
Plus and stuff. So
Sounds like
okay,
a plan.
Well, thank you very much, and for taking the time to talk to me. It's 6:55, so you have 5 minutes before seven and stuff.
Thank
So
you, Angela.
yeah, yeah, sure. Is there a I didn't look it up, but is there a Muslim goodbye phrase for goodbye or?
Same thing. Assalamu alaikum.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the same for hello and goodbye. So you only have to learn the one, and then the response is wa alaikum assalam, and the wa is and. So and greetings of peace to you as well.
Oh, okay, okay. So let me see if I remember this. Now, I've been practicing. Like I said, I was
Great.
practicing it so much, I was worried that I'd forget the question.
Oh no. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're fine. You're fine.
Okay, so let me. I wrote it down. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum assalam to you. Thank you,
Okay.
Angela.